If you know me, you know that my favorite band of all time is My Chemical Romance. Got the poster in the background for proof. I own all their albums on vinyl and CD, countless shirts. I'm constantly on the MCR subreddit looking for any information on MCR5 I can find. I like to think that I'm pretty knowledgeable about the band, but there's just one thing that seems unanswerable. Does My Chemical Romance have a bad album? The short answer is no. The long answer is this video.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I'm Trevor and I am eternally uncool. I make videos about music, music culture, and anything that interests me. But mostly music right now. So if that sounds like something you'd be into, then I highly recommend subscribing to the channel and watching the rest of this video. My Chemical Romance is a bit of an anomaly of 2000s pop punk and emo. Unlike other bands, they never seem to overstay their welcome, taking a hiatus at the right time to make them even bigger than they were in their heyday. And there's not as much drama surrounding them as bands like Fall Out Boy or Panic at the Disco, and their albums never dipped in quality. Whereas Fall Out Boy has albums like Mania, or Panic at the Disco has an album like Pray for the Wicked. My Chem doesn't really have a bad album. Ever since their debut redefined what post-hardcore could be, My Chem has been consistently releasing quality albums. From the bloody theatrics of Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, to the classic rock opus that is The Black Parade, My Chemical Romance are truly the goats of 2000s emo. They really pioneered an aesthetic and brand. But what happened when they switched up that brand? After The Black Parade, the band wanted to try something different. Something a little happier. They ditched the angsty, horror-influenced emo of their classic albums in favor of electronics and art rock. Danger Days is the closest thing that My Chem has to a bad album. It's not bad in the traditional sense. It's not overly produced like Pray for the Wicked, or creatively misguided like Mania. It was just jarring. In this video, I'm going to do my best to defend My Chemical Romance's worst album. This is gonna be a bumpy ride, so grab a drink, grab a snack, get comfortable, and let's get into the video.
Or we thought we had an idea of what the record should sound like. When it came time to mix and got close to us saying, okay, we're getting ready to release it, us and the label kind of realized it wasn't our best material.
The Black Parade was absolutely gigantic for My Chemical Romance. Up to that point, they had been a really theatrical emo band that was super ambitious, more so than their peers. But they hadn't yet cemented themselves as a true force to be reckoned with. But with the release of this one album in 2006, they managed to change all of that. My Chemical Romance were seen as new rock icons, showcasing their skills as writers, musicians, performers, trendsetters. Even critic Robert Christgau liked the album. But the success of the Black Parade almost cost the band their sanity.
And their lives.
I don't want to go too deep into it because I want to make a video talking about the process of each My Chemical Romance album. But just know that the Black Parade was filled with drama. They recorded in a haunted mansion. Gerard Way had night terrors. Everyone was depressed and unmotivated, and Mikey literally had to be removed from the house because he was having such horrible mental health episodes. So it's no wonder that with their next album, they wanted to do something brighter. They just didn't know it yet. Between the release of The Black Parade and the recording of Danger Days, My Chemical Romance would record a cover version of Bob Dylan's song Desolation Row, for the 2009 Watchmen movie soundtrack. This cover took the 12-minute folk song and condensed it into a 3.5-minute classic punk song. This style proved popular with the band, so they decided to go in that direction for their next album. Gerard Way told the NME at the time, "I think the next album will definitely be stripped down. I think the band misses being a rock band." He said the next release would be less theatrical and the band wouldn't hide behind fiction or makeup. He said the album would be full of hate. Was he okay? Wait, no pun intended. Fuck, I set myself up for that one. The band would premiere 2 songs at a secret show at the Roxy in Los Angeles in 2009. One was a song called Death Before Disco, which would eventually evolve into Party Poison on Danger Days. Gerard said in a Rolling Stone interview at the time, "It's a completely different sound for the band. It's like an anti-party song that you can party to. I can't wait for people to hear it. It brings back, lyrically, some of that wonderful fiction from the first album." They seemed pretty excited about this album. Gerard said it was going to be the band's defining work. Did he not listen to the Black Parade? Did he just forget about that one already? They were really hyping this thing up hardcore. Gerard Way told Rock Sound, "A friend who heard the record recently said he now had no interest in listening to our older work anymore. That we had made all of our old material redundant. I took it as a compliment. The next thing you make should always make the last thing seem unimportant, and I think that will happen when we finally release this album." They hit a bump in the road when longtime drummer Bob Breyer left the band in 2010. After that, it seemed like the band just kind of ditched this album. They became exhausted and unhappy with the recordings. They felt like they were holding themselves back. They shelved the album. After that, the band would start over from scratch. They returned to the studio with Black Parade producer Rob Cavallo, who put a little bit more pep in their step. They also decided that it was a better idea to have a story and fiction. That's where My Chemical Romance's strengths lie, in creating these big concept albums with interesting storylines. At San Diego Comic-Con that year, they announced that they had finished recording their 4th album. And later that year, they released a trailer on their official YouTube page, Art is the Weapon. This trailer announced the album title, Danger Days, The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys. The video featured the band in colorful outfits, as well as a small cast of odd characters, all set against the backdrop of post-apocalyptic California. It also featured a sample of what would become the album's lead-off single, Na Na Na, a song that stood in stark contrast to anything the band had released up to that point. The band would officially premiere Na 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 on Zane Lowe's BBC Radio 1 show on September 22nd, 2010. And 2 months later, on November 22nd, 2010, the album would be released to the world.
Well, I wanted to talk about the new album.
Okay.
Danger Days.
Yep.
Seems to be really in color.
Yes, it is.
Danger Days came out of left field for a lot of My Chemical Romance fans. Previous albums featured the band's love of horror and the macabre, as well as a defined theatrical vibe. Their stage costumes were always dark and very stylized, like a Tim Burton movie. But Danger Days had this splash of color to their normally monochrome style. Danger Days tells the story of the Killjoys, a group of rebels in post-apocalyptic California in the year of 2019. The album is narrated by Dr. Death Defy, a pirate radio disc jockey. The Killjoys battle against the evil Blind Corporation and its exterminator Corse and his Draculoids, robot vampires, I guess. The members of My Chem would adopt the Killjoys personas. Gerard was Party Poison, Ray was Jetstar, Frank was Fungool, and Mikey was the Cobra Kid. Corse would be portrayed by comic book writer Grant Morrison in 2 music videos. The pirate radio DJ Dr. Death Defy would be portrayed by Steve Rye of Mindless Self-Indulgence. There would be a little girl in the videos for Na 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 and Sing who was like the charge of the band, portrayed by Grace Jeanette. The story is more fleshed out in the comic books, but This is the brief synopsis. I might do a video in the future talking about the comic books if y'all want that. The album itself is great. I remember the day I bought it on CD. It was released on November 22nd, 2010, my 16th birthday.
But
I got it a day early because Borders Books accidentally stocked it early, which is probably why they're out of business now. I was so stoked for this album. I had first become a fan of My Chemical Romance after the release of The Black Parade, so Danger Days was really the first My Chemical Romance album released for me. I had immersed myself in the band's discography, so I was pretty familiar with their vibe. Danger Days subverted that. One of the things My Chemical Romance wanted to do with this concept album was portray what they thought rock music would sound like in the year 2019, which in 2010 still seemed like a lifetime away. More electronics, a bit dancier, a bit poppier, and they weren't far from the truth. They incorporated electronics long before Fall Out Boy, long before Panic at the Disco, long before Paramore. It's almost like they were giving us a glimpse into the future. They were so ahead of the curve on this one. The album sets the mood immediately with the opening track, Look Alive Sunshine, a kind of overture by Dr. Death Defy that leads into the real opener, Na Na Na. I remember this song being huge. It was on the radio, it was in movies. I remember being so stoked when I watched American Reunion and they played Na 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 in the background of one of the scenes. I was so stoked. Some people might have seen the song as obnoxious, which is understandable. The chorus is literally the band going, Gerard and the gang wanted to make a song that was kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon theme song. And it works. It's definitely the album's defining track. The band also gained themselves another huge hit with the song Sing. This song was absolutely stupidly gigantic. It was the second best-selling rock single of 2011 in the UK, ahead of Monster by Paramore, and just behind Rope by Foo Fighters. It was even featured in Glee.
Fuck you, Glee.
This was the song that MCR was known for in 2010. There were other singles, but none as big as Na 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 and Sing. Planetary Go was a dance punk song that sounded wildly different than anything they'd released. And The Only Hope for Me Is You is the best song that The Killers never released. And of course, we can't forget about the heartstring pulling rock balladry of The Kids from Yesterday, which really defines the band as a whole. Friends. Aww. They really experiment on this album, more so than any other album My Chem has made. A song like Scarecrow has a real psychedelic and dreamy vibe to it. Destroya is a fist-pumping rock song unlike anything else released around the same time. And Summertime reminds me of a Smashing Pumpkins song, with its softer, more alternative rock sound. My Chemical Romance really pushed themselves with this album. They really stepped out of their comfort zone. They crafted an entire world, as well as creating an entire comic book series out of just one album. What are the downsides?
If there's any rebellion in the record, it's a rebellion against ourselves and kind of definitely against being assimilated into modern rock culture and cutting your hair and looking respectable and getting into your 30s and all right, we're gonna be this kind of rock band. It's a rebellion against that very thing.
I feel like the change in style and aesthetic might have turned some fans off when the album was initially released. My Chemical Romance were the saviors of the broken, the beaten, and the damned. And now they're going pop? They had this gothic vibe for so much of their career, and now they're wearing pastels? Their albums embody themes of depression, grief, angst. And now they're singing about mall security?
What gives?
The band definitely did not sell out with this album. My Chemical Romance has too much integrity to ever sell out or do something that they're not 100% into. They were never really a band that rode trends. If anything, this album set a trend. My Chemical Romance was one of the first emo bands to incorporate those electronic elements in their music. But unlike subsequent bands who have done this after them, My Chem still retained that rock edge. Nothing takes a backseat to the electronics. If anything, the electronics are like a spice added to the dish that is this album. What am I saying? I'm hungry. I don't remember much of the discourse around this album at the time of its release, seeing as it was 10 years ago and I can barely remember last Thursday. I think most people were on the fence, either really loving the album or not really getting it. I don't think fans were really expecting this kind of change. They had this style we had all gotten used to, we had all loved, and with all the talk of this stripped down garage punk album, I think we all just got a little bit of whiplash at the bright electronics. My Chemical Romance were known for crafting songs that had a certain darkness to them. That was their thing. They made these bombastic rock songs about dark subjects. Helena was about grief, The Black Parade was about mortality, and Cancer was about cancer. They stepped out of this darkness into this Technicolor wave that I don't think a lot of fans were just ready for yet. Danger Days didn't receive nearly as much backlash as the other albums that I've talked about in this series. It wasn't phoned in like You're Welcome, or overly hated like Viva Lost Vengeance. It just kind of surprised fans. Tell me why I'm making this video again.
Well, it's a reaction to the record that we tried to make. We tried to make this record that was very unambitious and stripped down. So it's actually the response to that. We had nothing to rebel against, so we kind of created something to rebel against.
Danger Days, The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys is probably one of the best rock albums of the 2010s. I think it's very ahead of its time. After MCR went on hiatus, it seemed like all of their peers were dipping their toes into the electronica waters. But none of these albums would have the same creativity and artistic integrity as Danger Days. It was kind of like when Nirvana released Nevermind and then everyone and their grandma was releasing a grunge album. And I'm not comparing Danger Days to Nevermind, but you get my point. This album really shows My Chemical Romance's range as a band. They proved they weren't just a dark band that sung about dark things. They could also be a band that made you dance. They didn't have to bring the doom and gloom. They could dye their hair red and put on leather jackets and play with lasers in the desert. A lot of bands try to experiment and change up their styles and fail spectacularly. But My Chemical Romance did it with an admirable amount of success. Is this album as beloved as The Black Parade or Three Cheers? Hard to say. My Chem fans love the band. They love everything they do. But I think this album stands as a kind of outlier. It's not exactly hated, but I don't think it's held in quite the same regard as most of the band's discography. No matter what you feel about Danger Days, whether you think it's the band's worst album or not, you can't deny that it's an album that shows what My Chemical Romance can really do, which is pretty much anything.
If we were this perfectly normal, acceptable elevator music rock band like that everybody liked, that would be so boring, and we wouldn't be doing anything, we wouldn't be changing anything. So it didn't hurt us. I mean, I think we expect it, you know.
What do you think of Danger Days? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What are some other bad albums you would like to see me cover in this series? Let me know in the comments. That's gonna do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, then I highly recommend body slamming the like button and sharing this video with everyone you know. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2024, and every like, every comment, every share, Any interaction with this video at all really helps to get it pushed out to more people who might be interested in what I'm doing. And when I reach 1,000 subscribers, I will get an uncool tattoo somewhere on my body. Might be my bicep, might be my forehead. Probably not my forehead. I need jobs. If you want to follow me on social media, I post most frequently on Instagram. I feel like it would be nice to grow my Instagram followers as well as my YouTube subs. With all that being said, thank you for watching. As always, I'm Trevor. Stay uncool. And that's the end of the video. Goodbye.